listed at 6,900 square feet, but that's just a main building that's not even storage. There's 6,000 feet of storage behind that building. It's on 7.5 acres. There's a large prison 100 yards down the road.
That always works well.
Yeah, so
What's the asking price?
175.
What could it be worth?
Not as much as I had hoped. Well, it depends on if I expand or leave it how it is.
Let's do this. In a perfect world, this deal would be a deal just based on the storage, right? And there's 6,000 square feet of storage. They're asking 175. That's less than $30 a square foot. So there's potential it might be a deal. It's not big enough, but it's got a convertible space of 7,000 additional square feet that we can add in. But let's start by making some assumptions, right? What if we rent out the 6,000 square feet? How much rent can we bring in?
I couldn't get any rents from the competitors last night because none of them have websites, but based on what they're charging now, I was about 45 cents a square foot.
Okay.
I think I might have run it at 40 just to be conservative, so that was 480 a square foot.
How much for square? 29 grand.
Yeah, so I had it at 29.4 for gross potential rent.
Okay. Is everyone okay if I do 30 grand for easy numbers as gross potential revenue? So in the spreadsheet up here, you can see I'm just working on line 8. I'm just going to enter. Whoops. Go back to that.
Like the other thing I would say, like Ben, as you were saying, you'd be conservative with the rent or with the charge. I would assume, like with all these properties, you can essentially raise the rents, right? So I would I would definitely take what they're using, and you could probably, that would be conservative because you should be able to raise them all day long with all these properties.
Literally what they had was penciled on the P&L.
Yeah.
10 by 10, $50.
And that's a good, so the reason this is intriguing is all of these things that are making it hard to analyze it are that's where the opportunity is embedded. To Brendan's point, we're guessing here. We're all guessing, right? And when I share a template like this with you guys, I know my tendency, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but it's like I have to remind myself that there's no finished product. It's all just a rough draft. So we just put in 30 grand. Like, I couldn't have done that if I was too busy asking myself the questions about should it be 45 cents or 50 cents. Like, we're going to start with one assumption and see where it takes us. And over the course of time, because I'm talking it through with you guys, it might take us a half an hour, but over the course of whatever period of time it takes you, this thing is going to evolve toward our best guess. But you don't have to know an answer before you put it into the spreadsheet, right? Like put it in, you can always come back and change it. All right, so what's the collected rent right now?
I had it around 9,300. It's kind of hard to tell from what they sent me.
Okay. So we got $9,300 coming in. That's half the equation, income, for our as-is valuation. So now we're going to look at expenses. Do they have expenses?
Yep, they have insurance, taxes, utilities. No advertising.
Yeah, no, we don't advertise in this industry.
No maintenance that I saw.
Okay, what's the total expenses?
11,000.
All right, so you can see in this spreadsheet, and I'm not a spreadsheet expert, right now this would sum up all the expenses and give it to me. There are absolutely times where I'm like, screw it, I don't have time, we're too early in the process here, that I'm just going to override that formula and put in that. Did you say 11,000? Okay.
Does that include the front building, the expenses, burning out separately?
I mean, some of the stuff does, like the utilities for the whole property, but probably most of it is the front building. That's the only thing they were saying they were selling.
Right. So, and you got to remember, a property like this.
On their P&L, the expenses were like $7,000, but that wasn't included a bunch of stuff that's clearly going to happen.
Yeah. All right, so listen, we're at 11,000. Clearly, we're not going to go expense by expense line item in here. In the course, you guys have, it shows you, 6 to 8% for this, 1% for that, whatever, rules of thumb to get to your expenses. But the net operating income, based on what we know right now, remember we've fully excluded 7,000 square feet, right, is negative $1,700. So what's our offer? Negative 17,000, right? We need a 10 cap. Isn't that how it works? The take-home message here is income-based valuation, cap rates, it falls apart when you're talking about a property that's not performing at least remotely near something, right? If it were 60% full and we can convince the buyer to sell on a straight 10 cap valuation, great, we'll do it. But more than likely, to Tony's point, we're going to have to pay for a little bit of the potential, right? So clearly, this is not enough for us to make any decisions. What assumptions are we comfortable, assuming we know that at this point, because we're just focusing on running through the numbers, let's assume the market can support additional storage. Just converting that front building. It's 7,000 square feet. How much rentable square footage can we get out of that? 5,600? Can we multiply that by can we call it 6 for easy math? And it's going to rent, is it climate controlled or not?
Yeah, I guess it would be.
Okay. Do we know whether or not there's a market for climate controlled?
We do not.
Can we agree to remember that there might be potential we're leaving on the table, but we're going to pretend that we have to rent it out at the same as our other storage?
There is no climate control in the area that I know of.
Okay, so maybe there's potential, or maybe everybody else in the area knows that climate controlled would be a bad investment. So right now, we're just going to assume, even though we have the ability to climate control that building at roughly the same construction cost as if we install a kit and don't climate control it, if we can't get any extra rent, it doesn't make sense for us to turn our furnaces on, just like we talked about in Dillon yesterday.
There is an apartment in that building as well.
Yeah, Brett, feel free to chime in if you ran different numbers than I did.
That'll work.
All right, so our gross revenue on the property as it sits today after we convert it would be 60. Yes? All I did was double the 30,000 that we assumed previously because we're going to double the square footage by, right? So now here, and I don't know how tightly I'm going to stick to this example to make it real life because I want to draw from other areas to make sure you guys are getting the lessons. But we discussed, I think, on day one a little bit about how do we know how many move-ins per month, right? And we don't really know. It's going to be based on the supply and demand. It's going to be based on a number of things that we don't have information on yet. But we've got to start somewhere. So
Quick question. Before
Yeah.
you decided you're going to double the size, are you calculating the population saturation?
yeah, that's an excellent question. I'm not pulling out the spreadsheet and going through this stuff until it's past the sniff test of everything we did before the break. Does that make sense? All right, so as is, the income is $9,000. What's that monthly? $660 or no, $750. So in this is a second tab in the same spreadsheet. $750. This assumption, the template that it starts with is 2 move-ins per month at $75 per month. Now there's 2 variables there, number of move-ins and average value of the move-in, right? So we could toggle each of those in either direction. We're not going to do this now, but just so you know it's available to you, this third tab in the spreadsheet, the number of units, the size of the units, you fill this out and it will kick out to you, your total revenue, your price per square foot. You can also then, using these same numbers, and I'll just usually grab a little tab here, put an equals sign, and start typing the formula, your average revenue per unit, right? Because we talk most of what we've talked about has been per square foot so far because When you say per unit, it doesn't mean much if it's different size units, if you're going to be changing the unit mix. It's just a better way to do it. But at some point, we've got to dial it down because people don't come rent variable numbers of, they don't rent square feet from us, they rent units, right? So we've got to get it back to where it's consumer facing. So let's just pretend, I'm making the number up, but let's pretend that at this facility,
I use 60.
you use 60? Good. $60 a month. Should we stick with 2? Let's stick with 2, right? Now this is where I show my, the fact that I'm closer to Ken Holmes when it comes to using a spreadsheet than Brendan Daly. I'm just going to change this, right? Equals, this is, month 1 is the starting rent. That's what it is now. So I'm going to start there, and I'm going to add $120 to it. That means month 1, $750, month 2, $870. I do know how to do this, right? Right? So in year 1, assuming I have 2 net move-ins at $60 per, I'm up to 17 grand in year 1, collected rent. I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet, year 1, 17,000. You guys with me? We can repeat the process. Again, I'm an idiot, so what I do is I come here, I type in 2070 plus 120. Yeah, I got you.
Your Google Sheet does this for you.
So I'm going to change that to 120 and pull that down. By year 2, we're at 34,000, right? You get the idea. Yes, I understand that I'm less than impressive when it comes to Excel. I'm okay with that. We could do the same thing for year 3. I'm going to make it up, and let's just pretend by year 3 we're going to get to 87% of our gross of 60,000, right? So we could do 60 times 0.87. Everybody with me so far? Simplify things. As a starting point, just going to screw things up? Nah. Well, I should have done this after, but what are we going to need to do in year 1? Right, and what I would do is I would change these expenses to be what I know. What are the property taxes, Ben?
4,800-ish.
Okay. What's insurance?
26.
What other expenses do you have listed there?
I've got 1,800 there.
For what?
Well, for utilities.
Utility. I don't care if it's probably low. Just tell me what you know about the property.
On it for 1,200.
Okay.
Everything else I just left like that.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to wanting to know what this actually is, as we have 20,000. Again, I'm not pretending these are accurate, but just from an overall expense standpoint.
Yeah, they've got payroll on there.
Take the payroll.
Why would I take payroll out?
Still gonna have somebody there.
Well, it's not there right now.
Correct. You're right. But the truth is, we know we're going to need something there. What the point I'm trying to make you understand is $20,000 in expenses. Is that in line with what we would expect operating a property that could gross 60?
Yes.
What if this property was only today bringing in 40,000, but it had the potential to bring in 60,000? Our expenses would be 50% of the money we're collecting. Does that mean our expenses are too high? What's it mean? Our income is too low. You with me? Right? Okay. That's what David and I were looking the other night at one of his properties. He's got very big properties with hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue coming in, And he's like, dude, Mike, I'm doing something wrong. My expenses are at 70%. And he and I poked around for like an hour, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. The ratio we were using to come up with 70% was collected over expenses, right? Or the other way around. And he's only collecting 66% of what the facility will bring in because he bought it, he's in ramp up, he's increasing revenue. Once he gets to 87% full, his expenses will be right at a little higher than 33 to 35% because of things that make perfect sense. So what we determined is he's not doing anything wrong at all from an expense standpoint. It doesn't mean he can't maybe renegotiate some of those line items and bring them down, and he should do that. But he's certainly not at the 70% mark wasting, spending twice as much as we thought he should be. Does that make sense? All right. So we know we can't operate a property without advertising, right? We know that a small property like this isn't going to be $9,000 in payroll. Maybe it's $3,600 because we find a nice guy like Jim, who you met, who will do it for $300 a month, the things that we need. Management software, we know we're going to pay for that. A small property like this, it might be, I don't know, ish, $1,000. We know we're going to have advertising. I'm making up numbers. What are we missing? Do we have a call center in here? No. All right, so close enough. See how our picture's becoming more clear and we're becoming more accurate as we go? But when I started this, you guys are like, dude, that's like half a picture. You're making assumptions that you have no business making. That's 100% legitimate, and that's what I'm telling you need to do. And you're just working through it. Does that make sense?
Is there a video of you doing this on the YouTube site?
Yes, there's a 20-minute video on YouTube about how to value a property. Yep. So what I'm going to do is, for simplicity, I'm going to just copy these expenses over. All right.
What do you factor year over year, 3%?
As far as?
Income and expense side, got anything different? Like 1.5 on income, 3 on expense?
Like as far as inflation goes and just rising of it. To be honest with you, this stage of the game, I completely disregard it. The reason I can completely disregard it is because I'm only buying properties that I can double in value. So when I'm on the wrong side of inflation and my expenses go up faster than my rent, I'm almost doubling the value of my property instead of doubling. Now, that being said, that analysis is very important at some point. There are some properties you can buy and take full circle and never do that analysis. Are you maybe leaving a little money on the table? Yeah, but. So, to hammer home the point, this is a template. It started with debt service of $385. We're just going to get rid of that. Before I get rid of it, Ben, how would we buy this property?
I don't know.
Okay. Let me back up before we even do that.
I got to basically this. I got to 31,000 NOI in year 4, and then at that point it was like 11:30, and I was like, I don't know if I want to buy this property. So
Okay.
I didn't get the debt service.
I just want to play with my formulas here a little bit.
But that's a good, so to hit on that point, like what I realized, you need to be in the right mindset when you're looking at these, because you can easily throw away a property that's a good deal if you're not like focused on it and trying to make it work. But
Yeah.
I've done that, and people have looked at deals in this room that probably passed on because they weren't in the right mindset. Brett and I talked about it in the bus yesterday, and it's a huge thing to make sure you're dialed in, focused, and like trying to work through this and not be like, oh, I'll look at it again later or whatever, because you can lose the deal.
Yeah. And the flip side of that coin is, if you're tired, your brain wants to go to sleep, you might be finding things that will allow you to go to sleep, right? Give me the damn fatal flaw so I can throw this one away and be done with it. I'll go find another one, right? So if you look what I've got highlighted there, this is the end of year 3. It's $31,000, right? 52 collected, minus the 20 in expenses. What cap rate are we comfortable using here?
10.
Comfortable at a 10, all right. So I'm only going to mess with column 3 now, just so you can see this. Equals 2. 316 grand. Forget the financing stuff for now and the investor portion and that sort of thing. Those come in later. 316,000, they're asking 175. What do we think?
How much is capital improvements?
Yeah, we got to convert that 7,000 square feet, right?
$4 a foot, $5 a foot.
No.
10.
Depends. The building was built relatively recently, 90s or 2000. Either way, I think it was the 90s. It was an ATV shop. From the pictures, when I looked at it, the first thing I'm like, it's like looks like a country rugged with like the pine siding, and I couldn't tell if it was designed to look rugged or if it was 60 years old rugged. When we saw the age of the building, we determined it's probably in decent shape, but we won't know until we get there. But
I got it down as it was built in 96.
96, okay. So we're looking at, I would use 10 as a cost to convert of rentable square footage. So if we're pretending it's 6,000 square feet, you're gonna be 60 grand there.
Sprinkler system?
Probably not at 6,000 square feet, but maybe.
Tennessee, it's 2,500.
Yeah, South Carolina, it's 12,000. Well, is that true? It's true for my project.
Firewall is at 2,500 square foot, you have to have a firewall.
Okay. And a firewall isn't a huge deal. It's an expense, but not a huge expense. Sprinklers are a huge expense. But that's a good point. You need to find out what's going to be involved, right?
The value, you're going on a 10 cap, but you're 3 years out. Is that normal, what you would use, or, you know I'm getting at? It's now 87% rented, 87% full, but you're 3 years into it or 4 years into it now?
3 years into it.
Okay, is that what you use as your cap rate, is 3 years?
Whatever.
How long does it take us to get full? How long does it take us to get to the max value? And we determined that from this other tab where we did 2 net move-ins per month. If we had done 4 net move-ins per month, we probably would be working in this column at the end of year 2 rather than the end of year 3. And you see how big a difference that makes, because your ROI, a 3-year project, needs to make you a boatload more actual dollars than a 2-year project.
Okay,
For it to
first,
be
my next
worthwhile.
question is, okay, how many years do you want it to be to that?
Right.
10 cap.
So that's, just hypothetically, let's pretend we could, I'm not suggesting this is the case, but it's worth $320 at the end. Let's say we could buy it for $100, put $60 into it. So we're all in $160 to get to $320. That's pretty skinny, but it might be worth it depending on our objectives, our risk tolerances, whatever. We're doubling the value. 160 grand isn't a bad payday to learn an industry where you've never bought a property before. If it's gonna take 6 years, are we doing it? No. 3 years? Probably not. 2, maybe 1. If we have a construction background, that'll allow us to convert that not using Spanish-speaking Janus workers. That's gonna take 5 weeks, but we can get in there and do it with our construction crew because it's an hour from home and slam it out, and then we're gonna be full 18 months from now. Maybe all of a sudden we've got our ROI went up, we're bringing in enough money, and we're learning enough, and things are happening easy enough that we'll do it, right? You can't look at it as just how much money am I gonna make, right?
How much money and how quickly are you gonna make it?
Exactly. And what ancillary benefits are there? An experience, the fact that there's no risk. Would anyone do this project if they had to be all in at 200 to turn it to 160 in 2 years?
You mean 360?
I'm sorry, 360 and make the 160.
Sure.
Maybe. Would you be more or less likely to do it if the seller said, you know, I understand this, there's some work involved. I actually only need 5% down and I'll give you a loan, 6%, no interest, no payments for 3 years. And would you do it then? Or more likely? And what if he said, and there's risk and I got nothing to lose. If things go wrong, I'm not coming after your house. You don't have to sign personally, you just have to give me the property back.
Absolutely.
Okay? What if he said, and if I die anytime in the next 3 years, it's yours to keep? Is that even remotely possible?
Sure.
Is it remotely possible? David, tell people how possible it is.
Very possible. I got $250,000 of seller financing and a clause in there that it's not pay, can't be prepaid for 5 years, but as the offset for that, if he, I put language in there, if he dies, the loan is considered paid in full.
So the guy doesn't realize he now has a hit out on him, right? No, but all kidding aside, that's freaking crazy. And if you ask anybody if that's possible, I just asked all of you if it was possible, and you all said no. And if you had asked me 2 days ago, I would have told you no. It was possible, and it happened. Now, here's the deal. You'd only do that if you were in really good health and there's no chance you're going to die, right? How healthy is he?
He's 72 on cardiac rehab, so.
Did he knowingly have that?
Dude, let's buy life insurance.
He wants to have a fulfilled life, so he wanted a good income stream until he dies. I said, well, we'll set it up this way. But when you die, that's it. Your heirs get nothing. So, well, I don't have any kids, so there's no heirs.
So boil it down to what did David do? He solved the guy's problem. He gave him exactly what he wants. He wasn't... It's insane, right? And it happened.
Like Casey kills every seller that comes in contact. That's not an
Listen, if you die,